We are delighted that you're joining us for another podcast of Wake Up Aligned, and it is the podcast for chiropractors, where we get to talk about chiropractic lifestyle, and topics of interest. You can contact us through our email, and that is mailbag@amcfamily.com.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Wake Up Aligned. We are joined today in studio with a special guest. So Dr. McMurtry has got another week off. You know, the producer Snacks is in the studio with me today. And Snacks, have you noticed McMurtry's been like no-showing a lot on us here recently? We're carrying a lot of the weight. Have to get on that. So, but with that, to no further ado, we've got the honorable, the distinguished Dr. Zach Wilson in the house. So he just about lost it right there, folks.
Pressure to live up to, isn't it?
Yeah, man, got to build it up. You know, they might, their anticipation might be a little, underwhelming in the experience, but you got to build it up one way or another. But anyway, so Dr. Zach, welcome to the show. Say hello to everybody.
It's always a pleasure. It's good to be back.
Absolutely. Folks, there's a lot going on right now in this aligned AMC family. It's been just been an amazing year thus far. I know Dr. Zach, you've been along for the ride on a lot of it, and it's just amazing to see transformations taking place in these practices. And it's not just new practitioners out of school, right starters necessarily. I mean, we're watching doctors like been in practice 20, 30 years, and they are just seeing record growth right now inside the system. And not even records in one way. It's not just, look at our records of new patients across all these offices. It's records in every measurable way of the practice. Really drilling down to levels of mastering the protocol. Mastering, not even protocols. I don't even like the word protocol. The system, the principles. I've seen some extremely large offices, seeing what's happening inside the CA coaching, just the resources that are inside the family. Those of you that aren't doing CA coaching, I mean, that's one of the old things Dad used to do. Like, he used to say, Tom, just write FOOLOL on the butt of your hand and stamp your forehead, because, to stamp fool on your forehead. I mean, it's just amazing. But like the actors, for example, I mean, they hit missed appointment ratios well below 10%. That's impressive. And then you've got recent ones where $1 million a year practices are hitting 94-95% acceptance ratio.
Across a quarter.
Not
just a week or a month.
Correct.
That's consistency of 94% or greater.
So it's been a fantastic year as far as inside the practices, and then the Align family itself just keeps rolling out more and more resources and programs. The Third Mile Bridge was released halfway through the year, and that has been a significant add-on, and a tool that can really give you new perspectives, new ways to really take control of your finances, your budgeting, because if you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business.
Yeah, it's going to be a game changer for many, for sure.
So, like I said, lots going on, folks, but a couple of things I just wanted to cover before we jump into the content that we're going to talk about today is we are, folks, you are running out of time to finish the 2023 strong. You've only got limited opportunities to get to summits. I'm going to repeat that. Summits. I can't tell you enough. That is where the rubber meets the road. It's where everybody gets the traction. You and I have been mentoring for many, many years, in my case, decades, and it never fails. Summits and certified training centers. And then following the guidance, which is kind of following the guidance of your mentor. It's going to follow along with what we're going to want to talk about today.
That's right.
But folks, just, I want to tell you, leaders plan ahead, right? They don't shoot from the hip. Leaders rise early. Leaders plan daily. They lay plans out. They have their day planners. They make notes. They make lists. People like that tend to rise to the top, but they also plan ahead. So I'm telling you, what you do in the leading towards the end of 2023 is going to make a significant impact in what 2024 is going to produce. Don't wait to plan for 2024 around Christmas time. Okay.
Like they say, if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail.
Absolutely. So, limited number of summits. You've got but go ahead and just right now say it. Maybe you didn't make it in 2023, but you can make an easy goal right now. You can write it down and just say, I'm going to go to every summit in 2024. You do that, you've already made a significant stride to say 2024 is going to be a game changer.
That's right.
Another thing is I know we're going into the season of PADs. So folks, if you have not started to plan ahead, now that's something, if you want your PAD to be effective, right? Don't get something on a marketing event on the calendar and then don't give yourself enough time to plan ahead to make it effective. But if you want your PADs to be effective, you really need to be working on that about 8 weeks out, right? Because you want the notifications, things like that to go out 4 to 6 weeks out, if I remember correctly. And then of course, 2 weeks out, you're really making the push. So it's not something to throw together last minute, but your PADs, the fall, are a great time to bring that up.
That's right. And for all the members of Aligned, they all know that acronym PAD. But for the listeners that aren't part of the family yet, that stands for the Patient Appreciation Days.
Yeah, and I've heard that term PAD for so long, I think everybody knows that. But Patient Appreciation Day, yes, it's kind of like spinal screenings. It's kind of like POC, patient orientation classes. You don't do a patient orientation class. You don't do a spinal screening. You don't do a Patient Appreciation Day. You do it the right way, because don't compare health talks to health talks. You've got to look at the construction and are there critical components inside that procedure or that process that makes it more effective. So yeah, PAD is important, but you got to do it the right way.
That's correct. There's a reason why that marketing event and that procedure has been a part of Aligned for so many years, is because we've figured out how you do it correctly, how you do it in a way that's so impactful that you wouldn't even think about skipping it year in and year out, because it is a huge opportunity for us to make a bigger impact in our communities, to bring on more patients to get served through chiropractic. And it's a whole lot of fun.
And, obviously we weren't really planning on diving into PAD, but you never know where N8 takes us. But on that note, so many people make PAD, Patient Appreciation Days, like their big event. Like that's the time, that's their big piece of marketing. Really, I said leaders plan ahead. How many listeners really have a true laid out annual marketing calendar that it's interacting with other factors? And a PAD, as you and I know, when the AMC system's in place and has been for a long period of time, a PAD is not going to be a major producer of new patients, right? In your office, I'm sure when you do a PAD, you probably don't get 55, 60 new patients. You're gonna get a lower tier, but it's going to be predictable.
That's right.
Because you're already executing the AMC system that produces referrals in the first place. So you've got a consistent flow of referrals. All a PAD's there for is to kind of sweep up all the loose ones that have fallen through the cracks. But if you find yourself doing PADs and it's producing 30, 40, 50 new patients, it's kind of a telltale sign to us mentors.
You're probably not getting the number of referrals on the day-to-day that you should or could.
Correct.
That's
and
right.
PAD is just a part of an overall marketing calendar. I know we just took that. We kind of dove down into that rabbit hole for a second. And I know we've got some good content I want to see if I can pull out of you today. But before we do that, I want to give one shout out. I know each show we try to give some shout outs to the family, but I want to give a shout out to just a well-deserving family, and the family of Dr. David Schmidt and his wife, Jean. They, it's hard to believe just how many years ago was that? Maybe 3-4 years ago. They were up against it. They were in the process at that time of walking away from that practice where they are
Mm-hmm.
They were going to relocate down to Florida. They wanted to practice in the coastal areas of Florida and start all over. And I told them, I'm like, you realize you got a sleeping giant right where you are. If you'd really drill down and commit to that, I said, you can pretty much travel and vacation and have, beach houses and mountain chalets and things of that nature if you just stay right where you are and really develop what you got. And to their credit, they did that, and that practice has really, really grown and stabilized. And with that, that's my honorable mention. I don't know if you know this, you probably do, but they just returned from a 2-week mission trip to Turkey.
That's right.
Yeah. And his practice now is all cash, and he's averaging over $40,000 a month with and some people go, well, 40,000, that's not much. Well, it is when your overhead's as low as his is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about how much you collect, it's how much you keep. And, but here's the point. He was able to take 2 weeks off, go on a mission trip to share the gospel of the Lord abroad, and the practice more than maintained itself.
That's right. Came right back into it. Didn't skip a beat.
Yeah.
And you know what's fun is it wasn't shortly after that, right back at a summit, plugging back in. They didn't even, they didn't miss that. They didn't take that for granted. They know what got them to the point where they could do such a thing. Yeah, they're very committed.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome.
They're just great people. I've been doing this a long time, Dr. Zach, and I hope you can understand this, listeners, but it's really nice to be able, I help any chiropractor anywhere, but when I get to help the really good people, it takes it to a different level. And they're the salt of the earth. They're good people. So, I mentioned something a few minutes ago, Dr. Zach, that I really want to kind of throw at you. I said leaders plan. And I know you've been on a journey here recently that I'll let you describe it, but one of the fathers of leadership, the fathers of success, the mentors that kind of sculpted and built it all from the origin. And you've kind of discovered, and I'm going to let you tell that story, but who that is, and then to find out that the close relations that were had with those people are actually very evident right here inside AMC and Align some, what would you say, 70, 80 years later?
Yeah, it'd be
in
pushing
some cases.
Almost 80 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's somebody that I had heard of, and probably most of the listeners to this have heard of Napoleon Hill. But I've really tapped back into some of his old recordings recently, just hitting up some throwbacks. And he was teaching his master key classes, and it looked as though the videos, he was making those to go on, like air on TV, but he was just talking to the camera and laying down one principle after another. And I found what was interesting is I started recognizing some of these success principles that he didn't come up with. He was just responsible for organizing it and presenting it.
Yeah, because if I remember, his original book, he had wrote that by interviewing the greatest, you knew that, right? Carnegie, Rockefeller, some of the greatest.
And Henry Ford, he was tied in with.
Yep.
And he surrounded himself with the greats, and he felt like he was not the one. He was quite humble about his own self, and he didn't think he was the one that should be laying down these principles and organizing them. But Carnegie said, yeah, you're the man. Like, you got my confidence. Do it. And I started listening to some of these, and they were familiar. How it was Dr. Owen, your father, right? I had the privilege of getting to know him some before he passed on, but he was friends with Napoleon Hill,
right?
Which he had shared with us, but I didn't realize that he had drawn so much from Napoleon.
There's one thing to say that, yeah, I'm friends with so-and-so, and then you find out, oh no, he was friends with
Yeah,
Napoleon
right.
Hill and some others that I don't know if you know Clement Stone.
Mm-hmm.
Dad was really close with him, but it's fascinating how Dr. Owen took so much of those components of the PMA, the enthusiasm, the mastermind, the laws of success. There's what
That-
how many laws of success are there? 19? Is it 19?
I couldn't give you the
But
exact
either
number.
way, and you take that and then Dr. Owen to take it into a masterpiece and execute it into a systematic approach that works for any business, but specifically, obviously chiropractic.
Yeah. And that principle of enthusiasm was one that really rang true with me, but I would kind of like to park on the ability for somebody to remain humbly confident. Because I know you've got a lot of insight on that characteristic of humble confidence. But I thought it was pretty cool how Napoleon Hill was humbly confident enough that the confidence to not be overcome, that no, you can take on anything. And even if you get hit with what you would think of as a failure, it's never a failure unless you don't learn from it, right? But being humble enough to know that you never arrive. And the easiest offices, the easiest doctors for us to mentor and coach are the ones that remain humble, that remain coachable. And that's a really good quality for all of us to maintain through life. Your father, Dr. Owen, he had that, I know, because as I was listening to Napoleon Hill, he's laying down all these principles that I learned from Dr. Owen. But he didn't come up with them. He learned them from Napoleon Hill, who learned it from, it just goes back generationally to the beginning of time. But the humble confidence to know there's always something to be learned, and I can take that and apply it to my own world. And so if you let pride in, it will stifle that ability for you to step back and say, you know what, I don't know it all. I'm going to open up. I'm going to learn. I'm going to admit I don't know everything. I'm going to reach out for help. I'm going to enlist a mastermind. I'm going to get people around me to help nurture this thing called life, and on your own personal road to success, wherever that is for you.
It's an empty world. It really is an empty world when you're operating from self-based, because that's what pride is. Pride, fear, even unforgiveness. Those are three things that can tear you apart and hold you back. And all three of them are typically self-based. And the only way to remain humble is typically you have to get your mind off yourself to do so. That it's not about you. That's something,
when you flip that switch and you decide, yeah, it is not about me, all of a sudden you're starting to look for ways to get better at your craft or better at delivering your purpose in the world. And so you start seeing and recognizing these things that have already been around you before, but when it was all about you, you couldn't see it.
And it's also very hard to be authentic. When you meet somebody and they're out there, they're in their profession. You and I know who they are. But those, what I call them, they can be over the world takers, world domination kind of personalities. But do we ever look at them as true leaders? Do we ever really look at them as authentic, right? Trustworthy. These are all that. And I'm not trying to take shots at anybody. I'm just saying that humility, humbly knowing, first of all, for me, and I can only speak for me, right? The humility comes from my submission to my faith, right? And that's my beauty every morning, because I'd look at my life, my wife's in the studio today, and the life we have and the family we have. And I wake up every morning and just, man, Lord, I don't deserve any of this. And I'm just so thankful, and I keep that thankful heart. A thankful heart is a part of a humble heart, right? Heart. If you're egotistical and arrogant, chances are you're really not authentically thankful. So I think thinking good is thanking God, and thanking God is thinking good. And that leads to that humility. And I just love getting up every morning. My better days, let's say I don't always do it, but my better days is when I wake up and I just submit and go, you know what, Lord, I ain't got this. I don't have enough to face it, but I'm thankful that you do. And I just find that humility, as I've gotten older and older, and of course I've had my times. I mean, I think we all have. We're all, you and I men, we've had our times where we thought we had arrived.
Oh yeah.
We thought we were all that. And then we got knocked down a few times, right?
Life has a way of waking you up.
Yeah. And so, you learn those lessons. And the older you get, and it's called maturity, humble confidence is what you're really talking about, right? Humble confidence is getting to a point where your purpose is something bigger than yourself. And when you can submit to something that's bigger than yourself. I'm not saying everyone has to have the kind of faith that I have. I would encourage you to, but submitting to something much bigger than myself. And then submitting to the purpose of chiropractic, the purpose of serving humanity is more rewarding. But when you really start arriving, when number one, you humbly submit to the fact that, you know what, I can't control everything that's going to happen. So my definition of humble confidence, and I don't know if it lines up with Napoleon Hill or not, but my definition of humble confidence is I'm humble enough to know that I can't control everything that's going to happen, but I'm confident enough that I can handle whatever does. And until you get there, humility is I still have a lot to learn. I'm still what you were saying, and I'll throw it back to you here in just a second. I still have a lot to learn. I'm green and growing. I don't ever want to be ripe and rotting. See, when you arrive and you think the money in the bank, the prestige, that's what the world tries to teach. Today's world is all about the bling and all about the power. And both of those are shallow, fleeting, because they both can go. So whether you're on the top of the mountain, because most people can rise to the top, but more than likely sometime over the period of a lifetime of 70, 80, 90 years, at some point, you're going to get your wings clipped, right? And that's where you find out your character. I don't pay attention to people chirping on top of the mountain. I want to watch what your character is like. What's your character like when the challenges hit you? Because a lot of people crumble at that point, and that's where character is built. So I'm not even sure that's where you wanted to go, but when I think of humility is what is wisdom, really, because the wise one knows they're not all that. And when they try to be, it reveals a level of immaturity.
Agreed. It's stifling. It stops their potential for growth, to change, to improve. Yep. It's a roadblock.
Yeah. So how does that all apply to a chiropractor, Dr. Zach? I mean, you've been reading that, you've been focused on that. And obviously, I think every chiropractor out there, that's the interesting thing is you say, what am I? Right. And if your identity is solely just a chiropractor, that's a kind of a limited view as well. Because, you could be a husband, you can be a wife, you can be a father, a mother, and your identity is I'm a chiropractor. What is your identity and what's that tied to? And, there's a lot more to it. And you can be, if I tried to say I'm just a chiropractor and that's where my pride, my ego, and that's where my crown, my jewels in my crown lie, but your rest of your life is shattered and your marriage is on the rocks, or your kids are astray, or you've got illness, or you've got financial issues and things of that nature. It doesn't matter what your status is over here, so what's carrying you through? That's what I was talking about when I say humble confidence is more of a character issue to me.
Yeah, I would agree. As we work with all these different offices and doctors, and you see them at all kinds of different places and where they are in the process of life and different sizes of the office, and everyone's got their own story, but it reminded me of Dr. Yachter down in Florida. He exhibits that character, I feel, of humble confidence. So that's your shout out, Dr. Yachter.
Well, which Yachter are you talking about? Because you got two Yachters in Florida.
Well, I'm thinking of Dr. Dan, because he just got back from a little bit of a vacay time, and he was out of the office for quite a few weeks, spending some family time, some much needed family time. And both Doctors Yachter were very successful in practice well before they ever came along with Aligned and started changing their systems in their office. But what they've done is they've recognized with humble confidence, I don't have it all figured out. I'm never ripe and rotting. I'm always green and growing. And they wanted control back. And so Dr. Dan, I feel like he has made that decision. Like, I'm taking control back over life and over this practice. And with humble confidence, he's learning a whole new system that he'd never used before in practice. He's implementing all of the systems of Aligned and AMC, and he's really embraced that. And I see him at all the summits right up front, taking notes, asking questions, engaged to the very end. And he's reaping the benefits of that. He has regained a level of control over not just his practice, but really life.
But humble confidence.
With humble, if he would have been prideful, there's no way he would be where he is now with life. Because he's found that balance where he's not a slave to the practice while his family sits back and suffers, or his hobbies suffer and his personal life suffers. He feels more driven now than ever before. That guy's on fire.
That goes back to your purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we doing what we're doing? If we're only running a practice and we're going to spout off numbers and we're going to be the big guy shouting out, I'm the biggest and the baddest, that's kind of stuff is fleeting. It doesn't last. I don't know those people that do that for 30 years. Right.
Nope.
But Dr. Dan's passion, and he's 25 years into practice somewhere right around 25 years into practice when he came on board with AMC, and his purpose was big enough. All right, listeners, if you want to hear something from this show, his purpose was big enough that he was willing to do the sacrifice. His purpose was bigger than him, and he was willing to get himself out of the way, because he recognized he really needed to go through what I commonly call a hard reset. Now, folks, if you don't know what a hard reset is, it kind of sounds like you're taking the hard reset button on that computer and you're taking it back to factory settings. All right. Try thinking about if you've been in practice 25 years and all you know is how to do it this way, and it's stressful. Yeah, it produced some money, but I've never had a day off in 20 years. And you're going to change that system that you've been doing for 25 years. And for what it was, he did it well. But to be willing to submit himself after all the accolades and the awards and the success he had, to say, nope, hard line in the sand. I'm ready to go through a hard reset because my purpose is big enough. I'm not done. So humble confidence is kind of been the theme of the show. That takes both. I think Dr. Dan exemplified both of those. He was humble enough to say, I don't know what in the world you guys have, but I want some of that. There was an old song years ago that's called about called about a guy that came across another man walking in faith, and he goes, "I don't know what you got, man, but I want some of that." And that was Dr. Dan. He wanted something that he didn't understand, and he was willing to humbly submit himself to the process. Here's the other one. He was confident enough that he knew he had it in him to do it. And not everybody does that. Some people, they take the word humility and they take that as like, I'm beaten down. You don't have to be beaten down to be humble. It's not like I've been humbled. You know, you've heard that term. Yeah. I've been, life has really humbled me. That's like I've been defeated. No, humility is a form of strength, actually. But then you tie it in with that humble confidence. So like Dr. Dan, he goes, I'm humble enough to admit that I can't control everything that's coming my way. I don't know what to do or how to do it. And obviously there's something new to it, but I'm confident enough that I can handle it if you'll show me.
That's right. And confident, not just in himself, in that ability to go for it, but that confidence that I know he's got, that ultimately God's got it. He's got him covered. But also what he has found is AMC, that aligned family, and the support system that comes with it. And he can go through that process, that transformation of practice and life with the confidence that no matter what comes up, his family within Aligned, they've got his back.
And that's a different level of confidence. That's I've got strength in numbers, right? And knowing that you can trust the people and trust the process is a big part of that. And folks, that's what AMC is. That's what Aligned is. There's just a plethora of stories like that. How many years of this has been going on? And I heard a statement. I heard something. I read something, I should say, a few weeks ago. My wife and I were somewhere, and I saw this guy, and I can't remember the business he had, but he had a business in the back of the shirt said, "We're not the best because we're the oldest. We're the oldest because we're the best." Right. And I just like, I'm so awesome. I'm so stealing that because that's Aligned. That's AMC. You know, we're not the newest guy with a webcam video, and we don't have 3 or 4 clinics that we're, you know, hey, let me tell you all about how great it is to do it this way. There's something for everybody, and it's workable and trustworthy enough that you can take somebody right out of school that doesn't know anything about how to open a practice, and they can find success in a short amount of time. And then you can take somebody like we've spent the show talking about, like a Dan Yachter, that, man, he's completely on the other end of the spectrum.
Whole nother level.
And he sat in the same classes and ate at the same table. Both people are eating at the same table, and the principles and the content is there, and then you've got the support and wisdom to go with it. That's why Aligned is what it's what it is. It isn't about Tom Owen. It's not about Zach Wilson. It's about this conglomerate of people and resources and a systematic approach that never fails chiropractic. And all you got to do, folks, if you're listening for the first time, you're like, who are these people? Are you willing to humbly submit yourself to a process? And then once you research it, I think you'll be able to come to your first summit and be confident of knowing, wow, there is a new way, there is a different way. So, Dr. Zach, I had no idea where that was going to go. And I knew we were going to talk about Napoleon Hill, and I think we could probably do another show and go a different direction talking about, that history, because Napoleon Hill, Clement Stone, Bill Harris, they were all intertwined. Ed Kramer, there's another name if you want to find some books on that. Pure geniuses, pure geniuses. And then to find my father, and he took all of that and then systematically approached it, because Dr. Owen had dozens of clinics. He would literally take the system, apply it, and try it in this clinic over here with this personality, with this technique. And he was doing this in the 50s, 60s, and even 70s, and just perfected it down to where it was just core business principles that never failed. So, hey, Dr. Zach, thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. Hopefully, folks, you got something out of this week. And you know what? go confidently into this new week and just realize, humbly submit to the processes, and then you can be confident as an Align member that the processes will work. So have fun this week. We will talk and revisit with you next week on the next episode. With that, God bless.
Follow our show. You can share it with friends, of course, and we'd love for you to contact us at mailbag@amcfamily.com. In addition, you're always invited to attend or join us at a summit. Of course, registration is required. And we would love for you to check out the loads of free content we provide to social media every single week. Until next time.